I mean, basically, as far as church and God, I mean, I kind of grew up in the church, in the Methodist church, because since I could remember, I was Methodist. My grandfather on my father's side was a pastor at Methodist Church back when it was circuit riders, so he had a horse and buggy and traveled to three churches every Sunday. And when I was a child visiting him and by Yazoo, Mississippi, people would still come, to his front porch at night and have conversations with him even after he retired. But he was a pastor nearly 50 years. And on my mother's side, Johnny Williams, who was married to Marie Williams, who was a pastor here at one time, was my second cousin. And Johnny was very inspiring to me. He was always so kind and such a peaceful, kind person, and always admired him. So, but I started out at first memories at Deerford Methodist Church, which was right down the road, and then my home church ended up being Francis Asbury.
Yeah, my grandfather was a Southern Baptist preacher. He did the circuit riding too. He's from England, so I was brought up in his church, basically, South Side over by LSU, Southside Baptist. And so it was 24/7. Granny was even better preaching than he was, so she'll snatch you up in a minute. But she was from Alabama, he's from England, and so we were, brought up in Granddaddy's church. So that's my first beginning memory was being Baptist. We tried to dabbled in Catholicism for a little while, and then we went to church one day, and they were doing communion, and we couldn't take the communion because we weren't members of the church. We weren't this and we weren't that, so that made us feel very uncomfortable. So once we got together, we went to Francis Asbury, and I loved it. I loved it. It was like, this is what church, because what drew me into it was the pastor said, this is an open table.
Yeah.
This isn't if you haven't done this or that or the other. This is Christ's table, open to everyone, no matter what your sins. And so that really drew me into the Methodist church.
And for me, that was home already, because I'd gone there, as a child and up through my teenage years and so forth. So, we both felt at home. And, too, I mean, Wendy and I have known each other since we were 10, maybe 11.
Yeah.
I played sports with her brothers, and we used to play football in her front yard, and I was always scared of her because she was so tough, she'd run over you in a heartbeat. But I loved her, from way back. And she didn't really know that, but eventually we were able to come together and be a couple, and we're married. We have 5 kids and 20 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. So retirement is not a word that even comes into play for me. They're constantly needing something. We got one grandchild that can out-eat both of us, so it's always taking care of them. It's pretty much, her job mostly.
Yeah, that's my job, raising kids and then grandkids and then more grandkids.
Leslie and Frank Aiken were very dear mentors to me. They helped me navigate my ministry, my calling, and so I did go into the ministry. I went to licensing school for Methodist Church. I went to Wood Junior College, which was a division of Emory University at that time, for seminary, and then I was appointed to church in Lutcher, which was a little 100-year-old wooden church, a beautiful little church. And at some point, when you're a pastor, you don't belong to a church anymore. You belong to the conference. And they decided that, you're doing such a great job, we want to move you up, 3 hours away to North Louisiana. Well, both my parents were very ill at the time and depended on me daily. And I voiced that concern, and one of the cabinet members kind of made a statement to me that maybe you're not called by God, and I said, well, maybe you're right. I'm going to have to think about that because, you say that I may not be called to do this, but I've always been called by God. I don't think the bishop liked that too much. I decided to resign and just go back to my home church. And, I just always felt more comfortable in the church itself, being a member of the church. So I was a lay leader there, taught Sunday school. We did some Bible school teaching there. We loved it there. Like I said, it was home. Felt good to be back there. Then, of course, we had a tree fall in our house during the hurricane. 2 years of repairing that, and then flood came. Well, our church flooded as well, so kind of washed us out. We found this house in Central, not too far from here, about 5 or 6 minutes away. And then we got moved in and settled down, and the pandemic hit. And so, I couldn't even go to church. But for me, I pass a lot of churches every day, but every time I pass this church, I got this tug, like, why aren't you here? Why aren't you here? And so one day her and I were talking about it, and I kind of mentioned that to her. She said, well, let's go try. Well, we'd been through quite a year. That was last year, and she can tell you more about that because it really affected her a whole lot more than me, but
No,
it affected me too.
All of us. My brother had gotten diagnosed with ALS, and he fought it, a good fight as long as he could. But when he knew he couldn't fight it no more, he came to my house, to our house. That was horrible.
Yeah.
Because he was my baby brother. And
he was a great guy.
Very close. He took me fishing all the time.
But anyway, last year, Dean showed up, and like she said, we basically had to change our life. Just everything had to. He couldn't eat anymore. He couldn't talk.
Yeah.
He was tube fed, so he needed our
we had
attention
to figure
24/7.
His medical issues quick,
So. And there was 6 people just in 1 year that we had lost in so devastating ways, We lost Dean on September 15th. And at that point, we were just kind of lost. What do you do? Because we used to just spending our whole day and night taking care of him. And he wasn't there anymore, so. Took a little adjusting, a little time to
I stayed curled up in a ball
figure out what to do. And when we talked about coming to church, it's like, well, yeah, let's do that. And man, we came here, and the first time, Reverend Kennan's message, just like, bam, it was directed straight at her, and me. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
so she's bawling, crying. Poor Richard's sitting behind us. He's like, man, this poor girl, is she ever gonna quit crying? Cause,
it's like the first 2 months.
But Richard was so welcoming to us.
Yeah, it's like everyone, people that I don't even know, they're hugging me and holding me.
Right.
Because
and this went on for quite some time because every message that he brought just seemed targeted to what she was dealing with, what I was dealing with. So we're like, this is it. We're not going to try anywhere else. And then everybody started just kind of being loving and welcoming, and we just knew that we were in the right place.
There's a lot of blame. I was blaming myself for a lot and hurting because of it. And that's why I cried for the first 2 months. But it was like the first of a 2-part sermon about forgiveness. And I really needed to forgive people that had done me wrong. And I couldn't figure out how to do that until now. Don't blame yourself when you're not perfect.
pray and rely on faith, and don't give up on God. Don't give up on Christ, because He's the only one that can really heal us. He never promised we wouldn't have hard times. In fact, He told us that as long as we were here, we would have difficult times. He told all His disciples that. I think you got to trust in God, man. You just got to believe that He knows what He's doing. Trust in Him until you meet Him face to face.
And understand that He does things on His terms and His way and His time.